Hi everyone! As you continue to gather sources for your solution proposal essay, please consider these guidelines. If you haven't already, please review the directions for the annotated bibliography that will be due. I've also posted an example of what one entry for one source will look like for that. First of all, don't forget that this research will test your critical thinking skills. Not only do you have to read, analyze, and synthesize a number of sources, but you should also be ready to find raw data from which you'll draw your own conclusions. So this means you're going to have to use both primary and secondary sources. These are the ones we read about on pages 122 and 125 of our textbook. Yes, secondary sources will have conclusions and analyses that'll be helpful to you in your argument, but a lot of your evidence will come from what you can do with primary sources. You'll also have to be creative and thoughtful enough to decide what sources these will be. For example, if I don't like my white office walls and I want to propose that they be painted green, I'm not only going to find sources that discuss how my office should be painted green. But think about what other evidence I could provide and how to appeal to both logos and pathos. Some of my research might not even address my solution directly, or even at all. For example, I might use scholarly sources to find articles about how color affects a person's mood. And I might find another source that talks about how the color of a person's wall could affect their productivity. Or I might even try to think about the financial standpoint from which I could argue. Maybe green walls have to be painted less because less dirt shows up. I'll try to see if I can find evidence of this somewhere. Or maybe I can find evidence that you have to use less paint because it covers more quickly because it's darker. Or maybe people will be less inclined to hang things on their wall, therefore requiring less repair when they move out. None of my sources about office wall colors actually talked about this, so it's up to me to think about these things and find sources that might. Some of my ideas might also require me to do my own math and draw my own conclusions. I need to be willing to find and interpret statistics, measures, surveys, and other studies. Keep going like this, trying to think of every possible angle, counter-argument, piece of evidence, etc. I may also want to conduct some interviews. Since our problems are local, it may be difficult to find sources that give us the specific data we need. Setting up interviews with local experts will help us find that data. Use the information in our textbook to help guide your preparation for these interviews. Pages 307 to 311 help explain how to plan and set up your interview, how to write your script, how to conduct the interview, and how to use the information you found. The more organized you are and the more tips you use from your textbook, the more helpful your results will be. Some of our proposals might also benefit from conducting our own surveys. For example, if I were proposing that offices be painted a different color, I might survey all the people in my office building to figure out how many people are in favor of it. These results, if everyone were in favor of it, would be very beneficial to my argument. One online survey generator that's relatively easy to use is SurveyMonkey.com. It helps you create, distribute, and analyze the surveys you create. I strongly recommend some of you consider taking a survey. Depending on who you need to fill it out, one easy way to get results is to send it through email, Facebook, Twitter, and then ask people to share it. About your written and online sources, use the book's advice for how to evaluate them. Page 132 provides some important things to consider. The author's background, credentials, and publication history should be things that you decide whether or not this person or source is trustworthy. You also need to consider why they're writing the article and who they're writing it to. For example, the website The Onion publishes satirical newspaper articles. If I didn't know that these weren't true and they were only written to be funny, and I used this information in my proposal, I might look pretty foolish. So this is why, before I use any information from a website, I need to evaluate the author, the organization that supports the website, the purpose of the website, and the information they provide. Please carefully review how to do this on pages 136 to 138 of our book. The quality of your research will be considered in the final grade. One way to find scholarly and reliable sources on the internet is to use Google Scholar. You just have to go to a web page and you could actually Google Scholar and it'll come up. Also, if you find the option for advanced Google search, you can limit which domain names show up in your searches. For For example, if I only wanted to see government websites, I could go to domain name and then type in .gov. This would give me only websites that end in .gov. Follow these basic guidelines for thinking about what types of sources you should be using. You should include things like books, journal articles, newspaper articles, magazine articles, and websites ending in .gov, .edu, or .org, though you still have to be critical of each and every source. You'll definitely want to make sure you don't use personal websites, people's blogs, or just general sources like dictionaries, encyclopedias, and Wikipedia, because those are all very basic and provide just the kind of information you'll use to start learning about the topic, but not use as educated research. Okay, so finally I want to give you some tips on how to search databases and other search engines. ARCC's library has subscriptions to a number of databases, which are collections of magazines, journals, and books that you can access online. These are the perfect places to look for scholarly sources and newspaper articles. Just keep in mind that newspapers and popular magazines aren't scholarly, but they're a good place to start your research and learn about your topic. This is why you need to include at least 2 scholarly sources, so you're moving more in-depth with your topic. The homepage of our library lists all the databases we have available and what you can find in each one. Just one quick tip, when you do get into the database, if you only want to search scholarly sources, usually there's a box you can check that's labeled peer-reviewed. You can find a link to the library's website at the bottom of our D2L page. Also, if you've never searched the database, there are special tricks you can use to find your information quickly and efficiently. There's some tutorials actually on that same page, and I'll link them on our D2L page too. First, keep in mind that finding useful articles takes time and a lot of patience, but there are some things you can do to speed up the process. The first thing is keep in mind when you type into a search box, you don't want to type in a whole sentence. You want to keep your words few. This is where strong keywords come in. Go back to page 129 from our book and really understand what it's telling you. It's important that you think of a variety of words to search on one idea. There's also this technique called Boolean searching that helps you narrow your search even more. Let's go over a few of these techniques. You can put the word "and" between 2 words when you want your source to include both of those words. So for example, if I typed in country and music, this will help me show the search engine that I'm not just looking for articles about music or articles that say the word country, but I want my articles to be about country music. I can also use the word "or." If I put "or" between 2 words, it shows that it doesn't really matter which word is chosen. It could be one or the other. For example, if I'm looking up articles about teenagers, I might also put "youth," so it just looks for both of them at the same time, teenagers or youth. But let's say my search results keep providing me with this one result that I don't really want to see anymore. I could go back up and use the word "not" to eliminate those from the results. For example, if I was looking for information about presidents but didn't want Bill Clinton, I would put "President, not Clinton." Another way to speed things up is to avoid having to type in different versions of a word. So instead of typing in "nursed" and then doing another search for "nursing" and then one for "nurse," I'll just type in the root form of it, NURS, with an asterisk, and the search engine will look for them all. There's also another feature that lets me use more than one of these techniques at the same time. So for example, if I need information on President Clinton or President Bush, I can use the "and" feature, and then I'll put Clinton or Bush in parentheses. That way it reads it as President Clinton or President Bush. This just keeps me from having to search both of them in different searches. So instead of first doing President Clinton and then coming back later and doing President Bush, I can do both at once. Finally, the last thing to keep in mind is not to use stop words. These are very common words that slow down the search process. So avoid using words like that, the, this, how, why, and if. Your goal through all this is to think of the most specific, narrow words that will help you find the most related articles you can. That way you don't have to weed through ones that don't relate to what you're thinking about. The more specific it is, the fewer there will be, and the more likely it is to be what you want. But if you want the fastest and easiest way to find really helpful sources, you should just talk to a librarian. That's their job. They know how to find things the quickest. So if you can, go to one and ask for help. Okay, I know that was a lot to take in, but I really appreciate you listening, and I hope that these things help you find what you're looking for. Just keep in mind, if you have any questions or doubts or worries, just please email me or find me on Skype. I'd be happy to talk. So I hope it all goes well, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you do. Good luck!